Thanks, Greg. I'm delighted to be here this morning on behalf of Minter Ellison to welcome the very impressive Professor David Sinclair. David is a professor in the Department of Genetics and the co-director of the Paul F. Glenn Centre for Biology of Ageing at Harvard Medical School. He is also a professor at the School of Medicine at the University of New South Wales, the co-founder of several biotechnology companies and co-founder and co-chief editor of the scientific journal Ageing. Professor Sinclair has been featured in Time magazine's list of 100 most influential people in the world, in particular because of his work on anti-ageing. He is currently working with NASA to see if astronauts can be protected from the impact of cosmic radiation when they travel in space.
David.
Joe.
How are you, sir?
Great, thanks.
Thanks for being here, man. I appreciate it.
Hey, thanks for having me on.
Really looking forward to talking to you. Very much so. This is a fascinating subject for me, anti-aging. The idea that you'll be able to stop aging or even possibly pull it back or at the very least slow it down. What do you think?
I think that's all on the table. We've been doing this for years in the lab.
When I talk to someone like you who's an actual research scientist of this stuff, I always want to know, what are you doing to yourself?
How long have you got?
Like, what do you do on a daily basis?
What do I do?
First of all, are you 100 years old?
Getting there.
How old are you?
Turning 50. So
You're turning 50?
Yeah.
I wouldn't have thought you were 50. I would have figured you were for about 41, 42.
Well, that's kind of you.
So what are you doing personally?
Most of the time I'm in the lab and trying to run a bunch of companies to make these drugs a reality. But daily, I try to keep a healthy weight. I do intermittent fasting, which is pretty easy because I'm so busy I forget to eat.
How many hours do you give yourself every night?
I suffer from late night snacking, but I try to skip breakfast and even skip lunch if I'm busy. So I'm a night eater. But that seemed to be good because a study came out about a couple of weeks ago, at least in mice, that it's not what you eat, it's when you eat that's most important for longevity.
Really?
Yeah.
And when being when? Like what's best?
It doesn't actually matter if you eat a lot in the morning or a lot at night. I like nighttime eating. But you need a period during the day, at least if you're a mouse, probably if you're a human, where you're hungry. And that puts your body in a defensive mode. And these are the things that we've been studying in my lab for the last 20 years. What are the processes that diet and exercise do for us that keep us healthy? And why does calorie restriction and intermittent fasting make animals live so much longer? And we think we've figured out a large part of how that works, and now we're mimicking that with molecules.
Is the idea that you can mimic it with molecules and it'll be as effective as intermittent fasting?
I think the molecules will be better. And not only that, when we add them on to a healthy diet and exercise in the animals, they do even better. It's like a supercharged mouse.
Now, when you add them on to the mice, do you also add them on with intermittent fasting? And is there an additional benefit?
We do. One of the first molecules infamous molecules that we are known for is resveratrol from red wine. That molecule, discovered it in my 30s, or at least linked it to aging. What we showed was that if you give it to a fat mouse, they're as healthy as a thin mouse. They live just as long. They didn't get heart disease and all of the other bad stuff. Then what we did was interesting. We gave it to the mice either every day in their food or let them skip a meal every day so that they were fed every other day. And that combination of resveratrol plus every other day feeding, we had the longest lifespan we'd ever seen, and it was additive. Same with exercise. If we give our latest molecule called NMN to a mouse and we exercise it, it'll run even further than it could with either of those alone. So it's not an excuse to sit around and just eat chips and watch TV. It augments a healthy lifestyle, gets you further than what you could get naturally.
So are you seeing a benefit in addition? So is the idea to compound all those things together? Exactly.
Right. So you asked about myself. So I eat healthy. I try to skip meals. I also take supplements. And in fact, most of my colleagues are in the field of aging, or anti-aging as people call it. So I take NMN every morning.
What is NMN?
Good question. So let me take a quick step back.
Sure.
So about 20 years ago, Lenny Guarente and a team of us at MIT discovered a set of genes that controls aging in yeast cells, just brewer's yeast, what you find in beer and bread. And those genes are called sirtuins, and there are 7 of them in our bodies, 5 in yeast. And what they do is they protect all organisms on the planet, plants, bacteria, humans, from deterioration and disease. They're like the Pentagon. They sense when we're hungry, sense when we're exercising, and they send out the troops to defend us. So we think that these genes are responsible for the effects of dieting and exercise, which is great. What that means is we can now mimic that with molecules. So NMN is one of those molecules, so is resveratrol. You can think of resveratrol as the accelerator pedal for the sirtuin genes, and the NMN is the fuel. And without fuel, resveratrol won't work, so NMN is the gas in the car.
I've heard of resveratrol, but is NMN a new molecule? Is this commercially available?
Some people have started selling it on the internet. So the sirtuins, okay, get this. So sirtuins need NAD to work. Without them, they don't work. In fact, if you don't have NAD in your body, you'd be dead in about 30 seconds. It's a really important molecule. But as we get older, we lose NAD. So by the time you're 50, like I almost am, you have about half the levels of what you had when you were 20. So that's not good. And these sirtuins, they don't protect the body without high levels of NAD. So what NMN does, they boost the body's levels of NAD back up to youthful levels again. And if we give them to mice, these molecules to mice or even to worms or yeast, they live longer and they're super healthy.
Now, what level, like how many milligrams are you taking of these things?
NMN is something I get from myself. I'm not selling anything. So I take a gram of NMN in the morning. Based on clinical trials, it's been shown that will raise NAD.
With or without food?
I take a little bit of yogurt that I make myself at home just to
settle
me. I've been doing this for a while, and I only start doing stuff when I see it work in animals first. So take the yogurt, mix in some resveratrol. Resveratrol is great, but it's really insoluble. It's like brick dust. So in the yogurt, it'll dissolve. Take another half a gram of resveratrol.
And how much? Half a gram?
Yeah. It's a powder. I have a few kilos left over from clinical trials in my basement. So yeah, that's going to last me a few decades. And then I also take at night some metformin, which is probably the most radical thing that I take, which is a prescribable drug for diabetes.
Metformin? Met, M?
M-E-T.
And prescribable drug. But you don't have diabetes.
I do not.
But you take it for
preventing cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and aging.
And how much do you take of that?
I take a gram of that as well, which is about a low dose. Some diabetics take 2 grams, so it's not crazy amounts.
Is there any side effects?
Well, the good news is that it's extremely rare that you get sick from any of these molecules. In millions of patients around the world, nobody's getting sick. The worst you'll have, as far as I can tell, is a stomach upset. So some organs are very easy to reverse. Muscle, liver, even brain, we find that we can rapidly reverse aging within a week.
Wow.
Doesn't mean you'll look younger necessarily. This is a company that was spun out of MIT. It's called Inside Tracker. And someone can come to your house, take your blood, or you can go to, say, a phlebotomist. And then what happens is they track your blood over 35 markers. It's cheaper than having it done by a doctor. And I've actually been tracking myself for the last 6 years. And I can see what goes up, what goes down. What do I do that makes me better? What do I do that makes it worse? And they also use AI to give you recommendations of food and lifestyle. And they can also estimate your biological age based on true correlates of longevity, inflammation, blood glucose, testosterone. These things correlate with lifespan. And so I was looking at my biological age, and it was going up and up and up. I was actually older than my age. I hit 57. And I thought, if I die young, this is not going to be a good look for the field. So in 2014, I took my health into my own hands, and I went on 2 of the molecules that I've told you about today. I started taking metformin, which I could get in Thailand, on my way to Australia. I was borderline diabetic, so if you can be prescribed this drug. And I also went on NMN. So I'm going to show you what these independent tests showed my age to be over a period of 3 months. See the graph on the bottom? The red line is my age going up. And then when I started taking these molecules, you can see that I plummeted. I don't know if you can see the ages, but that top peak is 57 point something. The bottom that I landed at 3 months later, 31.4. And not only did that tell me that I was doing well, my body told me I was doing well. I felt younger. People said I looked younger. I certainly had more energy. And so I think that this graph is hopefully the first of many similar graphs across the globe where people can potentially alter not just how they feel, but how long they live. And I may have given myself another 15 years of life here. By the way, my father, who's 70, almost 78, is also taking these medicines voluntarily. I'm not forcing anybody. And he just climbed the highest mountain in Tasmania. And my brother, who's 35 years younger, could barely keep up. So it's so far so good.